It's clear on this copy. There's lots 15 and 16. The 15-foot easement adjacent to Second Avenue, which is a permanent drainage easement granted to the city of St. Augustine Beach for ingress, egress, and public utilities. So even with the overlay district setbacks that allow 7.5 feet on each side, the applicant would still need the 15-foot easement on the western side and would be allowed 7.5 feet on the eastern side for a total of 22.5 feet. He's asking for an east side setback reduction to 5 feet, so he'll have a combined total of 20 feet for the side setbacks. And he's also asking for the reduced overlay setbacks of 20 feet front and rear. And this applies to both these lots, lots 15 and 16. And the demonstrated hardship is the 15-foot permanent easement on the west side. The applicant is here.
Anybody on the board have any questions of Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Okay.
Could you explain to us the small lots and standard lots in the overlay district and what the difference is, and also why you wouldn't include the 7.5 feet in the alleyway?
The 7.5 feet of the vacated alley is not included because the small platted lots are defined in the section of the overlay district as the originally platted 93-foot by 50-foot lots. So it has been the City Commission's interpretation that even if the alley is vacated, these lots still qualify as the small platted lots.
Was that decided in a meeting? It's not quite clear on the book, the LDRs, because it
The
says
LDRs
over
define them as small platted lots, and
4,650 feet.
right, platted is
Add on the
93.
7.5 feet, even though they're original, they're still added on, and they bring it over to 5,000 square feet.
Well, the
which would
7.5
Qualify
feet,
them for a standard.
the 7.5 feet of the vacated alley is like the 15-foot easement. It can be used as setbacks, but you cannot build in it.
I understand all that. Qualify for one without adding in the 7.5 feet seems a little strange, and I was wondering, is this a commission rule? Or?
Yes.
Chair?
I mean, I know we signed off on it.
Mr. Law was at the commission meeting when this was decided.
This overlay district was created during the draft code with Lindsay Hago, I think was her name. It was formerly called the City Center Platted Lots. It was confusing to the commission, so they ordered the name changed during the approval process. So it became the overlay for residential lots platted prior to the adoption of the code. The key to remember is it's asking for a 50 by 93 platted lot. The alleys, whether vacated or not, are not platted with the lots. Those are given to the constituents based the city has no longer any need for them, and it reduces the city maintenance of them and any kind of liability. So this did come up at the commission meeting, and it was discussed in great detail, and it was determined that my interpretation that the city platted lots is the platted lots themselves. And the reason why is some of the alleys, as we all know, are still unvacated.
Of course. Some
So
are vacated, some are unvacated.
Yes, sir, and it's up to the constituents on those lots to petition us, I think with a 70% or some number of recommendation to vacate the alleys. So at this time, the platted lot district is based on the originally platted lots at the beginning of the city of St. Augustine Beach at 50 by 93. These are unique because to apply for the overlay, as you'll see in the next agenda items, the overlays, it wouldn't help, it wouldn't work because of the 15-foot easement on the western side that Ms. Miller talked about. So what they're asking for is still a combination of 20 feet setbacks, which we do use, we do use periodically with the flexible setbacks to save trees. So it's, we have to have a combination of 20, and we're still maintaining that. These properties, even though they are applying under the overlay districts, they are only two-story houses, but they're still subjected to the same medium density rules, the 35% lot coverage, and then the 50% impervious surface ratio.
Can't switch the house around on a small lot.
A
It's not
50 by,
allowed.
no, sir, 50 by 93 lot is very challenging to build. And Mr. Kenny, as the applicant, has submitted some, and I don't know if everybody's seen them in their agenda books, but there are some typical houses he's planning to build if the Planning Zoning Board agrees.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
We are maintaining, for the side setbacks, we're maintaining for the rule that we have for the trees, to save trees, we're maintaining a minimum of 20 feet combined.
Yes, sir.
Are we keeping 15 feet between structures? Or is the next variance going to reduce that?
No, the lots to up here
Yeah.
would qualify for the same for the overlay district I just described. As a two-story house and following all the other rules in the LDRs, they'll still be subjected to apply for this overlay and get a 7.5-foot setback. Even reducing this to a 5-foot does not violate anything in the Florida Building Code regarding fire separation, and you would have 7.5 foot there. The lot line is the delineation in all building
Okay,
concerns.
so, but in here for at least for the tree section, it says we have to maintain a minimum of 15 feet between structures. But we'd actually be coming inside of that by
12.5, yes, sir.
And then for our front and back setbacks, the minimum is supposed to be 50 feet. If we're gonna adjust it, this is gonna go to 40 feet.
Well, the overlay district, as we're gonna see on these other four, is gonna put these front and rear setbacks at 20 feet. So you have these two lots where the overlay doesn't help, so we're applying for a variance for the entire property. So by keeping these at 20, they'll be consistent with the other properties. But keep in mind, they still have to follow the lot coverage, which is still gonna stop them at 35%. It just allows us to jockey the buildings around a little bit more, and it keeps the street line consistent.
Okay. Okay, and I see the hardship with this one, with the 15-foot easement, that's a permanent easement that he can't, there's no
Yeah, it
moving
was,
that around.
yes, sir, it was set up a long time ago.
Yeah, okay. Okay, any other questions from staff? Okay, if we can hear from the applicant?
There's a question over there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If we do approve this, are they restricted to the two-story? Like they're submitting?
That's a great question. They are asking for a variance. I would say yes. These are the documents that were submitted. If he wanted to build a 3-story there, and this variance was granted for a 2-story, I would say he doesn't comply with the order of the Planning and Zoning Board. Now, we don't want to get into the architectural details, because I don't know if we even have the legal authority to do that. But definitely, he's submitted all houses are 2 stories, so we can make that as a condition of the variance.
Okay.
They have the authority to do it if they want. They don't have to. It's your choice. You can include it or not.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we could hear from the applicant, please.
Eric Kinney, 6 Oceanside Drive. Just a quick clarification on some things. There are 0 trees on any of these properties. It is clean. So there's not any jockeying for trees or worrying about 15 feet between them. For these 2 particular lots, I did design 2 homes that are in your book. That's a 30-foot wide by 56-foot deep with a height of 27 feet. And that goes on either of the 2 lots. And then a second design. This one, which is 30-foot wide and 51-foot deep. So they're well within the front and rear setbacks. I didn't use all the space. And then the 30-foot wide uses the total amount of space that we've asked for. And that's about what we've got. Other than that, I'm open for any questions.
So the front setback of 20 feet, you did or did not need?
Yeah, for both of these, I put it at 20 feet, and then the rear setbacks, I'm not fully going the 60 feet that is on there. I'm using this as, one is 51-foot depth and one is 56. So one is 4 foot shy of the total amount requested and one is 9 foot shy.
Okay, so, but the combined setbacks from front and rear are going to be greater than 50 feet?
60 feet.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Law.
Part of the way we develop in today's time is we like to push the houses that are front setbacks. And that gives the potential clients or the new families the most rear yard for families, pools, and whatever. And like I said, the next following 4 lots, we'll be asking for the overlay districts, which give them the 20. It's up to the Planning and Zoning Board to determine if they want to keep them consistent with the same front approach. So they would all look the same if we gave them the same setback. But like I said, he's still limited to lot coverage
Right.
of 35%. Yes, sir. So by doing the box, that's what we call the box in the box method. It simplifies site reviews for governments. When he does his site plan, we'll see that box on the official site plans, and the house has to fit inside that box. The only thing allowed to stick over that on average would be the 18-inch overhangs, which are allowed under the code.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant?
These buildings won't be more than 2 stories, right?
Correct. These are just 2 stories.
Okay, any comment by the board? Thank you very much. Any comment from the board? We do have a request for public comment here. Dennis Dean.
I actually was wanting to speak on the A Street one, which was D. They were both overlays. I thought they were the same one. but,
Oh, okay.
Similar subject, different applicant or area.
Okay.
So D, Mr. Dean? D?
D, please.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any, I'd like to make a suggestion if we can, if I could, to the board. This, even though we're looking at it as a separate item, it does tie into the next variance that we're going to be looking at. And if I could make a motion to table this for a few minutes until we go through the second item, and then we can address these all at one time, unless there's any more comment for anybody that has on this item at this time.
No, I'm going to correct it just
Oh.
a minute.
I'd like to comment on Mr. Kenny's plans.
Okay, if you could turn your request card in and come on up and give us your name and address.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, you had mentioned that the next one's a variance. It's not actually a variance, it's an overlay district. So it's allowed by the code, just for the record, it's, the following ones are allowed by the code, they just require planning and zoning approval. So it's not actually, these 2 that we're speaking of right now are variances, the next 4 lots will be overlay districts.
Which are,
Okay, and they're not asking for anything?
They're asking for what the code allows, but it does require the planning and zoning board to approve it.
Okay, I thought I might have been missing something then.
Yeah, it's a 308B or something.
go ahead.
Yes, sir, this one is 308B.
Thank you, sir.
I would just like to keep them separate, yeah.
Keep them separate?
Yeah, I would. That's just me personally, but.
Kevin, are you concerned about continuity?
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to figure out whose mask is talking. Well, I think, at least the way I was reading it, unless I missed something in there, it appears that they're sort of dependent upon each other. We're building an entire neighborhood here almost, and doing it piece by piece. And if we haven't discussed the second part yet, I'm a little bit confused about where I want to go with the first part, not having discussed the second part yet. We can always come back and vote on them separately, and I don't have a problem separating them for a vote and separating them for future further discussion.
Yeah, point of information and procedure, can table this one and talk about the other one, and then decide this one to be consistent, if that's what you want. They do need to be kept separate, though. So it's two separate votes, they're two separate issues.
Yeah.
But you may want to debate the other one. All you can do is table it, and then you just bring it back off the table afterwards.
Just for a few minutes, unless there's an objection. Okay. Dan? I'm sorry, I can't read the last name, but if you want to come up and give us your name and address, and
Yeah, my name's Dan Jung. I live at 10 Lindemar Drive, St. Augustine, Florida. I reviewed these plans, and aesthetically, I think they're going to look nice in the area. If Mr. Kenny can keep these buildings at a 2-story level, as opposed to a 3-story, I think most people are going to be pretty happy with it. But I wouldn't want to see a 3-story, 2-story, 3-story, so just, I think if he's consistently and he goes with that 2-story approach, I don't see why anybody would be displeased with it. I've been in the construction industry for 30-some years. I'm a licensed contractor, and the plans are good. Aesthetically, they're nice-looking plans. So that's all I got to say. Just give them a fair shake on that.
thank you.
Okay.
Any other comment? Okay, without objection, we're going to table this for a few minutes and bring it back up after we go through the next item.
Okay, this is an overlay district application followed by the same applicant, Mr. Eric Kenny. And these are lots 11, 12, 13, and 14. Lots 12 and 13 are immediately adjacent to the east of lots 15 and 16, and 11 and 12 are to the east of lots 13 and 14. These are also considered small platted lots per the overlay district regulations in section 3.08.00. And unlike a variance, a hardship does not need to be demonstrated. As long as the application meets the specifications in section 3.08.00, the applicant is allowed per planning and zoning board approval to apply for the reduced setbacks for overlay district small platted lots, and those setbacks are 20 feet front and back, 7.5 feet on the side, and that is what the applicant is applying for.
Okay. Any questions from Ms. Miller? For Ms. Miller? From the board? Nothing. Okay. If we can hear from the applicant?
Just a couple things. Again, Eric Kenny, 6 Oceanside Drive. Going back to the variance application, if the easement wasn't on the first 2 properties that we've talked about, I would be including those in the overlay district request for today, so it would be for 6 lots, but because of the easement, we're doing it as a variance and asking permission from you to do it that way, whereas on the 4 lots that are in the application for the overlay district 3.08, I'm only asking for what the code allows to be put forward. Given that I do have different house plans along the same lines that were designed for each of the lots, 2-story again, that's one design, similar design, just different fronts on those. And those 2 houses are 35 wide by 55 deep. And then, let's it's too big for the screen, but this house plan is 35 deep, or wide by 48 deep, so that doesn't take up all of the 60 feet, so there is room for if somebody wanted a covered rear porch or something like that. So with those come with a couple different floor plans that can be, on the inside, not anything from aesthetically from the outside, but aesthetically, those are the two kind of plans, actually three of the front elevations that, were picked out, and we tried to make it look as beachy as possible. And they are only two-story, and they are 28 feet in height, and the square footages go anywhere from 2,150 to 2,500. So, any questions?
Yeah, are you going to be actually building any of those houses yourself?
Yeah, that's what I do. So I've designed these 5 plans that I've showed you here tonight. These are what I have slated for these 6 lots.
That's
So
the
these plans were specifically designed
for the lots.
for these lots if accepted by the PZB. So that, 2 of them have already been engineered, so if, I'm assuming if you guys say we're good tonight and you vote approval, I will be putting in for the permits within the next few days. I'm just waiting for the engineering to be completed on 2 of the plans.
So let me ask you a question since you're up there.
Sure.
On this one, you said height 28 and a half. And that's all dependent on the pitch of the roof. Now, you're not thinking of changing the pitch of the roof?
No, these houses are designed in full already.
Already designed.
They're
And
done.
You talked about engineering and different things. Do we know that we don't have to add any dirt to these lots to change that, height of the houses that you said you already have ready to go?
Well, the lots over there are flat. Now, the question, I think maybe what you're trying to ask is, where does the 28 feet start? On some of those lots, the elevation is such that, yes, there will have to be dirt brought out, but that's Mr. Law's kind of enforcement as to at what height do I start the elevation. But wherever I start that elevation, 28 starts. On 2 of the lots, I think the last 2 require about 1.5 feet, 2 feet of dirt. And the 4th Street side requires about 2.5 feet of dirt of what's out there to get to the 10-foot FEMA level. Other than that, I'm not asking that we put 20 feet of dirt and then start from there.
I'm just saying, because we've had people say we only needed 3 feet of dirt, and all of a sudden it's like 13 foot high, and wow, we've got something that should never have been built as high as it is.
Well, I'm dictated by road elevation
They were
and
too.
FEMA.
They were too, sir.
So I'm just, I can only answer the question as best as I can, but the answer is, the elevation is dictated by Brian Law.
Okay, but you do have to bring in dirt. Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, similar to what we did north of the Marriott for that development for those 10 properties, this will be basically the same thing. We will authorize one entire permit to scope the 6 properties to maintain positive drainage. This is a very simple development. We need to break it at the back of the property line and drain it both ways. The ones on the western side, I believe there are a series of catch basins already over there, but we'll be
Correct.
working with the Public Works. And Ms. Longstreet, if I can, yeah, the buildings will not breach the city's height. We do ask that the garage floor be at least 6 inches above the pavement. Keep in mind, Mr. Kenny will be paving part of the street to get to the properties prior to any energization. That'll go through the Public Works Department. It's a platted street, the city never paved it.
And that's Fourth Street, not Fifth Street.
And also, the fire department will be involved with that street, just to make sure that their trucks can operate properly. He'll be responsible for bringing the utilities in and everything.
Okay, and if my understanding is correct, we are required to approve this if there is no reason to not approve it. If there's nothing contrary in their application to the rules and regulations. And as I look through the checklist here, I see nothing but yeses checked. So I'm assuming for your needs, there's nothing contrary to approving this. So which the rules say we shall approve.
Yes, sir,
it.
it's very clear. If it complies with the intent of the small platted overlay district lot for lots platted prior to the adoption of the code, you must approve it unless something is deemed to be not in accordance with the city's code.
Okay.
Just if you're interested, I've built houses in the area, and so I picked 3 streets within a stone's throw from this project, and just kind of to let you know the setbacks on all those of what they were in the years that those were built. And I'm not asking for anything different than those houses that were approved in those years, and then subsequent to that is when the changes were
But
made.
this is not a variance, so you're not asking
So
for
I'm
anything
not
that's
asking
not
for a
allowed.
variance, but I just thought that
outside
was,
this-
I just thought that was relative. I mean, these are houses that I designed for those particular lots. I've designed houses for these particular lots, and they are basically the same houses. So if anyone wants those addresses, they can look and go over and see the look and feel of those houses on the lots, if anybody was interested in doing that.
But everything you're asking for, you're allowed to do within the overlay district?
Correct.
Okay, so, and it meets all the requirements, so this one is a required approval?
To go as far as to also say that these are all 2-story, not 3-story, and so with that, I've made.
That was another question I had. I know for the variance, we can put that in the variance. Is there any way to, I do notice some sentiment from the public that we,
Yes, sir, I understand your question. To answer that, you have to understand that there's 2 overlay districts in the city. One existed, the other one was brought in with the draft code. So you have the beachside medium-density overlay on the eastern side of the boulevard. That does have special precautions with 3-story houses. You get into what we refer to as the wedding cake house, 70% of the enclosed structure on the 3rd floor. This overlay is subsection B, I believe, and, B, and it doesn't mention that. So at this time, there is no provision in the code limiting 3 stories other than what he's submitting.
so
I
we,
don't believe you can put a condition on this because
On
there's
these
not a
4.
restriction. But the variance is you're well within your rights to put any condition on there that you see fit.
so on the first 2 that we tabled, we can put a condition on that, but there's not a
sir.
condition that we can put on
No,
these
sir, you
4.
could ask that these 4 pass the overlay if the board sees fit, vote on it. Then you can bring back the 2 lots off the table, and as one of the conditions of the variance is the house shall not exceed 2 stories in height.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant or of staff? Any comment from the board? We have a motion from the board.
What are we voting on, which one, the overlay or the variance?
But the other one's tabled still, so we're voting on the overlay, which actually, by the LDR, we're required to approve if there's no,
Right.
if there is no, nothing contrary to the rules and regulations and LDRs in there. And according to the checklist that we have that's been submitted to the building department, there is nothing contrary. So this should meet all the requirements and get an approval by this board. So we have a motion? I'll make a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, if we could bring back,
You want to bring back the applicant, or you want me to stay here, or? You want me to stay here?
you could probably sit down for a few minutes if you want. I don't know that we need we're going to bring back the previous, find it, the previous variance request. So this variance request would put these houses in line with, and other than a couple feet closer, because of the 15-foot drainage ditch, it would put it in line with the other 4 houses that we just approved. That's what the variance accomplishes.
Yes, sir.
Point of information, you need to make sure you pull this back off the table, that you can do it the same way you did before without objection, but you need to actually do it.
Without objection, I'm going to pull this back out from under the table or wherever we have it.
Wherever you had it.
I couldn't find it.
That works.
Okay, is there any comment on the variance?
It definitely defines what the hardship because of the drainage ditch, so.
Yeah, I would like to just make a comment for the record that the hardship that's submitted here is described as the setbacks aren't what they used to be. And I would say that we are required, the commission requires us to find a hardship in order to grant a variance. And the staff has helped you find the hardship with the drainage ditch, and I think the board doesn't have a problem with that. But the written narrative on here saying that basically the new setbacks are inconvenient, it can't be the hardship, and that, I think, puts us in a difficult position. If the setbacks are an issue, it's not an issue for us. It would be an issue for you to go back to the commission and have them change the setbacks back to where you want them to be. But you're asking us for a variance from the existing setbacks, and having found, and for me, I had a problem with this coming in, but having found the difficulty, the hardship being the drainage ditch that you can't move, it's a permanent easement, I think that does qualify for the hardship and makes it difficult for you to use your land the way it was. But just for future reference and for things that get brought to this board, we are going to need to have the backup, we're going to need to have the hardship described in order to help out with variances like this. Any other comment from the board? We have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the variance number 2020-07 and 2020-08.
We have a second.
We have any conditions on that or no?
Thank you, Mr. Prentice. Also, a restriction, I guess, conditions in this variance to make sure that the buildings, any of those buildings on those lots are no taller than 2 stories.
And the pitch remains the same.
I'm sorry?
And the pitch remains the same on the roof.
Okay, I'll accept that as a part of my motion.
Okay,
I second it.
Yep.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries.
Mr. Kenny, we will, once the orders are written up effectively, we'll need you to record them and clerk of the courts prior to permit being issued.
Recognize it.
By the chair. But you need to get with Bill Tredick on your road. Get that started.
Okay, and our next item, item D.
Okay, this is another overlay district application. This is a lot on the corner of A Street and 2nd Avenue, 202 A Street. It's also an originally platted 93-foot by 50-foot small platted lot. The applicant is Centerpoint Homes, and the applicant's agents, Rick Matola from XL Properties, is here to speak on behalf of the applicants. The house that is proposed to be built on this lot is also a 2-story home, and they are asking for the overlay district reduced setbacks of 20 feet front and back and 7.5 feet on each side. And I'm sorry, this lot is not on the corner of 2nd Avenue. It's the second one in.
Next to the park, the plaza, next to the plaza.
But there's a lot next to it on the corner of 2nd Avenue. That is adjacent to 2nd Avenue. This is the second lot to the east of Second Avenue on A Street.
Okay,
Oh, and the alley has been vacated behind it also.
any questions from the board for Ms. Miller? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Law, we have the same here, which it meets all your requirements and,
Yes, sir, the height of the building, as we just discussed earlier, is not relevant at this point, other than as applied with the city's code. It is asking for the 7.5 and 20-foot setbacks under the small platted lots in 3.08 Bravo section. At this point, based on what was submitted, I see nothing that they're not complying with. Keep in mind, that it is a medium-density property, it'll have to follow every other code.
ISR.
Just a little history, this was actually submitted without knowing that they did not comply with the building setbacks, because this company did build one prior to the setback change right across the street and a little more west, right?
Yep.
So when I just happened to be at the counter, I looked at the site plan, I said, you need the overlay district. That's how we got here on this one. It was just a changing of the setbacks, but no, we have no issues.
Okay. We hear from the applicant, please.
I'm Rick Matola, 307 Orcas Road. Just like Mr. Law explained, the home we have planned is just slightly wider than what would fit in the current setbacks of 10 feet on each side. Our home is 34 feet wide. And I would just make a note that, we do have room to, the front and rear setback are not as important here. It's really just the side setbacks of 7.5 feet, which we need, and that's why we're asking for the approval from Planning and Zoning Board.
Okay, thank you. We do have a number of speakers on this issue.
May I ask you a question first, or should I wait?
Go ahead.
On the information packet we got, there's a couple of trees you're going to be taking down. It looks like there's in the driveway. Is that's a gravel driveway?
It will actually be permeable pavers, not gravel, but it's a change we need to make on that site plan. But there's mostly cabbage palms and non-protected trees that are going to be removed.
They're all,
Just in that driveway area, but all the other trees you see on here without the X in them will remain.
yeah, I was, the ones near the driveway, which I thought were going to be gravel, it says gravel here, so my mistake, I not. Could it look like two of them are almost off the gravel? What are they, and could they be saved possibly?
They're cabbage palms. And really, until we get out there and measure exactly where the driveway is, if they're right on the border, it's not necessarily the best spot for a tree.
All right.
Any other questions? Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Okay, we do have some public comment. We have Dennis Dean.
Good evening. Dennis Dean, 205 A Street. I was a little bit confused when I saw this coming up because it seemed an awful lot like a variance, but I understand it's an overlay and there's no hardship, and I'm still trying to figure it out, even though I did speak with Mr. Law about it. But I guess my concerns about it, I live at 205, which is right across the street, and I built 30 years ago, 90, so I'm pretty familiar with A Street, and there's a lot of traffic going on. And when you push the house closer to the street, I think being there, it creates a lot of problems. I've seen a kid with his dog get run over on the leash because cars are going 40 miles an hour. Now, that's not, y'all's issue, but it's our issue. Anybody that lives there becomes an issue. And putting them up right on the street, you're gonna walk out your door and 20 foot, people are right there hauling butt. So that's a consideration. In addition to, it's pretty close to the people that are directly across the street. I know the neighbors, you're going to be, front door is maybe 100 feet to the people across the street, so that would maybe be something that would be a concern, not a hardship, but, concern. Also, all the houses there were, most of them anyway, were built before I did. I'm one of the newer ones, and they're all 25 foot off. So if we want to be consistent with the street line, which I think is important, that we'd like to see that 25 foot along the street line continuous. So that's really, I think, just about all that I had to say about it, other than, they do have the 15 foot in the back, which is nice, and it is a corner lot. It abuts the parquet. So there is plenty of space, and, but that's all that I had to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michael Cloward. Michelle, I'm sorry.
Hi. I'm Michelle Cloward. I live at 204 8th Street at Unit A. So my unit, I live there with my husband and my 2 kids. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. Sleep in our house is very important, as you know. And so I have a huge concern with the construction that's about to be built. I have also grown to love the lot. There are so many birds and life in there. I mean, it's been very peaceful for our family, and I'm very sad to see it go. I'm very happy for the new owner and what they're about to, endeavor and everything. But it's sad for me to see these trees go. It's sad. I'm really, I don't know what's going to happen to all the wildlife in there. My main concern that I wanted to speak on is the 7-foot proposal. Currently, the unit, so I'm a renter and the owner is here. She didn't have time. She got here a little bit late to sign up to speak, but she is here. And basically, the house goes 11 feet and 2 inches from the property line. And so now this next unit, 7 feet away, my bedroom window is right there. So we're talking, less than 20 feet that all this is going to be going on. I left my last place, and it was under construction for over a year for my house that was being built. And so my nerves are just like, going crazy right now. So I also live across the street from Dennis, who was just here, and my concerns with his point with the children, with the dogs, they're valid. I have 3 signs, slow down, and some do, some don't. I don't know what this means for our little 8th Street neighborhood, but we're all very close, and we all, we just want it to be uniform and not to just be bigger, The outdoors are beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, I do want to remind everybody that because this is an overlay district request, we don't have an ability to say no. If it meets all the requirements, the rules tell us we must approve it. So, and Mr. Law has told us that this request meets all the requirements of, so the decision-making process that I think some people are looking for here may not be available.
Well, at least everyone had a chance to hear. So, thank you very much.
If your owner would like to speak, she can still speak.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if you'd like me to read that section into the record, I'm more than happy to do it for you regarding approval.
Sure.
Section 3.08.00 Bravo, subsection number 2, approval. The Comprehensive Planning and Zoning Board of the city shall be responsible for reviewing all applications. The board shall be required to approve any and all applications that clearly meet the requirements set forth in this section.
So what happened is that the rules changed since, is that what's, because I'm still a newbie. So the rules changed after these houses that have already been there, where now they're allowing more, is that what?
Yes, sir. All right, so several years ago, the setbacks were 25 feet, and Ms. Miller's been here for 20 years. She's more of an expert on it than I am. But for about 3 years or so, the setbacks were reduced to 20 foot and 7.5 on the sides. In 2018, the commission ordered it returned to its state. This overlay was part of what they called a draft code. The city spent serious resources on having it prepared. And as I went through the process, we broke each chapter down, and it takes about 4 months to get a land development code change passed. So it appeared in front of the Planning and Zoning Board once for recommendations and the commission 3 times. That's what brought this code in here. Part of the problem with the 50 by 93 lots is if you follow the 25-foot front and rear setbacks and the 10 on the left and right sides, you basically only allow a building to 28% lot coverage. The code allows 35%, so there was a discord in the code. But in lieu of changing the code for a blanket statement, they can appear in front of the board and make sure it lets the board review the packages, and it lets the people see what's going on in their neighborhoods. So that's how we kind of ended up here, the best that I understand it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Brian Del Rey.
Good afternoon, Brian Del Rey, 203 First Street. I just received notice about this pending structure, and regarding what I would presume was a variance request due to the size of this. I had some clarification, but I just was still a little confused. I always presumed, there's a clarification there, I suppose, but my reason for being here is just hoping that if this would be developed, that it would do it to present standards. You know, what the pushback that I presumed happened 3 years ago was because people were getting fed up with these type of McMansions, if you will, in little lots and disrupting, disrupting neighborhoods and as green as the sound, the nature around it. It is a beautiful lot over there. You know, I live behind it. It's my setback, basically. And my house had to abide by these codes without a request of variance. And I was just hoping that the other houses would be treated equally. That's essentially the extent of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Cynthia. I'm not even going to try the last name.
Pennington.
Huh?
Pennington,
Pennington.
outside. Here she comes.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Pennington. I live at 203 A Street. I think all of us were under the impression that we were coming here tonight to give our comment on the 20 by 20 by 7.5 and the 7.5 foot variance. But you, Mr. Kincaid, have explained that that's exempt from the conversation. So what was the point of putting the sign in the yard, just to tell us you're going to build it regardless? I mean, I'm just kind of confused right now. I guess if you don't pay attention to what's going on in this town, you lose. I can see that right now. Things are going to be done the way they want to be done regardless. But I am going to go ahead and give my comment anyway. That is not a 20-foot variance closer to the road. It's a 20-foot variance closer to the sidewalk. There is no road on our side, our sidewalk on our side. We got 2 or 3. And so that's what my concern is. You know, I say every day when I back out of my parking lot where my office is, that whoever designed that parking lot was so smart, because you can't back into that other car no matter what you do. You put it 5 foot closer, I think we would have had problems. And I think we are going to have problems there. It's not a good idea to put that much closer on A Street. I can see where it might have fit somewhere in a different neighborhood where, you know, there's not a ton of traffic going up and down like there is these days where we live. So I guess the only way to get this stopped is to try to go back against the variance again, but like I said, the guy said he's been doing this since 2015. It's the new norm. So, you know. But I have no problem with them building, I mean, I knew it was going to happen. I've been here 17 years, I know it's going to happen. That's not my problem, I just think it's too close to the highway, or to the, yeah, it is pretty much a highway. So, nothing new about it, so I guess I'll see you later.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Chris Pennington.
Awesome. Welcome to the neighborhood. Chris Pennington, 203 A Street. As Cindy said, we lived there 20 years. We like how the politics are ran up here in the city. You just make a decision and it's done. That's great. I have a concern on the drainage. Maybe we could get together. We have a terrible drainage problem down there that's been a problem in my front yard, Mr. Dean's front yard, for how many years, Denny, that they've never addressed? 20, 25? As my wife said, it's not closer to the street, it's closer to the sidewalk. I watch all the people from C Colony and all the way down A Street, walk down that street every day. You guys need to address the county, get them to widen that sidewalk. You guys need to address the police officers, get them to slow traffic down. This is ridiculous. I hope you don't have big vehicles, because when I back out of my driveway straight across from you, I'm backing onto the sidewalk because I have a large work truck. I guess there was no point, as my wife said, coming up here, because law is law, right? You guys changed it back when, but actually, all the houses are uniform down through there, just as Mr. Dean said. There's nobody else in the neighborhood that's got a variance to be 7 feet between the properties. It's all on 5-15, 5-15. It should stay that way. Maybe we need to make some changes in our politics.
The commission, just to let you know, the commission makes the rules that this board. Okay, thank you for your comments.
Commissioners need removed. They've sat there too long. I still have time.
Can the applicant speak?
Absolutely.
I still have time.
Yes, sir, he's got to address your
The
concerns.
commissioners have sat there and they ran this city into the ground. Came here and changed it what they wanted it to be, not what it was.
Pennington, you're off topic right now and out of order. Thank you.
Of course, I'm always off topic.
I just wanted to address one of the concerns that seems to be coming up, which is being closer to the sidewalk, which I tend to agree with. And we have plenty of room. Like I mentioned before, the front setback really was not our main concern. Our house is not incredibly deep. We could move it back 5 feet, to meet that 25-foot setback and match the other houses and be further away from the street if it's safer. I don't have a problem doing that.
Thank you.
Can I ask him to address something? I'm the owner of the property next door.
You could address the board if you'd like. You state your name and address for the record, please.
Sally Nichols, 115 15th Street. And I just wanted to ask him how he's going to handle being so close to this property, that the property next to us, when we had to do 11 feet and he's only going to be 7.5. It's just hard on the people that live in the property, and I feel bad because they live in my property, but it just seemed like I understand building the house, I just don't understand why the 10 feet. And then if he, just like I had to get a variance last month, why he doesn't have to. And I know it's the law here, but it seems like it should be fair. But how is he going to handle to where they can live in peace at the same time while he's building his house so close to them?
And to answer your question, this board only has the ability to regulate through the rules that are given to us, the land development regulations. And he's not doing anything that's outside of the land development regulations. So he's not asking for an exception to the rules. These are the rules that are in existence for this, when the overlay district is applied, these are the rules that are in existence for him to build under. He's asking to build under these rules, and the rules that we have to operate under, if he meets all the requirements to the satisfaction of the building official, who gives us a checklist and everything, he meets all the requirements, we're required to approve these. This is the rules that we're, so fairness, I mean, is
Well,
pretty
yeah,
objective,
what I
but-
have to look at in the future is seeing if the law can be changed. Is that what you're saying?
you always have that option, I would imagine, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other public comments?
I'm not on the docket, but can I get up and make one?
Sure.
Okay, sure. I'll be quick.
Mr. Chair, we're just going to need him to fill out a comment card when he's done
Yes.
speaking.
Yeah, sure. So, my name is David Kafori. I live at 339 Ericola Ave, and I'm actually on the docket later. What we have here is just a fundamental misunderstanding across the board with the interpretation of the rules. So, the way this should be is if somebody's going to build on a 50 by 93 lot or 50 by 100, and it's located within the overlay district, they should just be able to submit to the building department and it get passed through at that level and not have to print out all the sets of plans to give it to you guys, not have to come up here, do the meetings, all this stuff, because it's not doing any good. So, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. We should just be able to go to the building department or, Rick or whoever, submit what you want, and then it gets passed through and it's done. It saves the applicant $200. It saves all the people that came up to speak their time because their efforts are futile. So, if they really have an issue, like you said, go speak at the city commission meeting and try to get something changed there, because it's obsolete. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if the Planning and Zoning Board does recall, I did try to eliminate the overlay districts and install the 50 by 93 reduced setbacks. It was met with some resistance, and it was pulled at the commission meeting. So that's how we got here. We did make every effort, I would say it was probably last year, Pony, to pull it, and it did not get any traction. The Planning and Zoning Board did not make a recommendation on it, and the commission was concerned about that.
So we are operating within the rules that are very clearly stated here and given to us to operate within. Any other further public comment?
I would just like to thank you for volunteering to put the house back at an extra 5 feet. I think that was a really nice thing to do. I just want to say that. Maybe you will help with some of your neighbors? Maybe not, I don't know, but thank you.
I think it's kind of necessary, just because we've talked about the look of the properties. We said, and the first two things that we were looking at before, and A and B, A, B, and C, or B and C that we were looking at before, is it all going to be uniformly looked at? How is it going to look aesthetically? Well, all of these other properties on A Street have conformed to the old norm of 25 foot. So if we're going to allow him 20 foot, it's going to look completely off. And it is dangerous. Everybody's going ridiculously over, and the speed bumps aren't stopping anyone.
There's no speed bumps
Well, those little ramps that they put on A Street.
Oh, yeah, but that's at the other end, and there's nothing down by
Yeah,
us,
you're right, you're
to your
right.
point,
But, and I didn't even realize that the overlay actually went as far as to the second out, to number 2. I thought it was only 2 blocks. I didn't realize it was 3, I guess. I guess that was my mistake. But anyway, I still think it needs to be at 25.
Any other comment from the board? Okay, I don't believe we can put any conditions on this. I think we need to either approve it or deny it, and without reason for denying it, we are required to approve it. So I'll make a motion that we go ahead and approve the overlay application for this property.
But I think we can, because aesthetically, it's not the norm.
The rules do not allow us to do anything but approve it or deny it.
If it doesn't go with everything else on the entire street,
Right, the rules say if it meets the rules of the overlay district, we have to approve it. It doesn't say anything about if it matches the other houses or if
does
it,
this go back to the commission?
no.
No, ma'am. This is a one-stop shop and drop. If it complies with the overlay, you are required by the code to approve it. The gentleman has voluntarily and verbally said he'd be more than happy to move the house back. But as far as my understanding, and the city attorney can back me up or tell me I'm wrong, you would have no authority to grant any specific conditions on this. If there was a variance or a conditional use, yes, you can dictate the terms, but this is purely an overlay, and the Planning and Zoning Board is charged with seeing that the proposed development is in conformance with the code.
Mr. Law, if the wording is, I'm sort of playing with the system here, but if the wording says that the applicant agreed to 25 feet in the front, would that be acceptable in a motion?
Obviously, the city attorney will have to weigh in, but I would say no, because you can only enforce what the code is. And, you know, we've had nothing but good dealings with this builder at the last house, which was about 2 years ago, and I expect he'll honor his word.
Yeah, I would not advise you to do that. I think it would be,
Just,
open you up to legal.
thank
Thank
you.
you for doing the 25-foot in the front.
We get a second for discussion?
Second.
Okay, now we can discuss the motion. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay. All right, we are on D, item D.
Right? No, I'm sorry.
No.
On item E.
Yes, sir.
E, sorry. Yeah, E.
So what's going to happen with
Yes.
the order sign, you'll have to get it, pick it up.
An eggplant.
E, correct, the fifth one, right.
Get it.
This, again, is an overlay district application for a small platted lot. This lot is Lot 15, address is 314 B Street. The applicant is asking to build a two-story house with the overlay district setbacks of 20 feet front and back and 7.5 feet on the side. David Kafori is the applicant and the agent for 904 Ventures LLC. We just spoke on the previous application. He is here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Miller?
Yes. How high is the building going to be?
It's 2 stories and there are elevations.
No, I didn't see any total height. Well, I can just ask the applicant.
Yes, I'm going to leave this up and maybe the applicant can address that. It cannot exceed 35 feet.
20 feet.
20 feet?
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Law, this overlay district application meets all the requirements for you?
As far as I understand it, and I would like to bring to the board's attention that Mr. Kafori has designed a house that's actually a little bit narrower than what's allowed. Great for that. The overhangs don't seem to be an issue as far as total height, as Mr. Kafori said. You know, if you add what you have, the 1 foot off the ground, the 9 foot, the 7'6", and just doing linear scaling, you'll see that from that 7'6" up to the peak is about 5 to 6 feet. So he's in no jeopardy of breaching or even coming close to the 35-foot city building height.
I'm sure he wasn't.
Okay, Mr. Kafori.
Once again, David Kafori, 339 Ericola Ave, 32080. We'll try to make this as brief as possible, since essentially what we're doing is taking a vote on something that has to be said yes to. So this is an 1,800 square foot house, one of which we built many. We built 401 B Street, 403 B Street, 405 B Street, 400 C Street, and 402 C Street. None of those homes exceed 1,800 square feet. Anytime we build west of A1A Beach Boulevard, we always try to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood so as to save as many trees as possible, so as to not build any homes that go above 20 feet. We don't build any 3-story homes that are west of A1A Beach Boulevard, only east of the boulevard. So much like the others we've built, this one will fit right in. It's only 1,800 square feet total. As far as cutting down trees, the lot's already cleared. There was previously a structure in its place, which was a 1-story home that spread over 250 by 100 lots. So we acquired the 100 by 100 property. We sold the corner lot, which is now known as 316B. We own 314B, and we plan to build this house that's presented in front of you there.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Okay. Any comment from the board? There's no public comment on this, right? Any comment from the board? A motion?
I make a motion, we approve the overlay district file number 2020-03.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and item F, post-permit modifications.
Evening. I am going to present this case. I feel it might be better to answer the questions faster. I did place a memorandum from the Public Works Director regarding it. We just didn't get it till 4:40 today. And he has shown some requests for landscaping, but we can discuss that later. This is a post-permit change to a mixed use that was approved in November of 2017 by the Planning and Zoning Board. This is a mixed-use building, and it's 2 businesses on the first floor along with 2 independent rentals to be on the second floor. During the development of the properties, we had some design issues where we had to lower the pitch of the roof to get it into compliance with the building height. We had surveyors and architects to verify it, signed and sealed letters for the city on public record. But during the construction, we were driving by and we noticed a rather large deck. So that qualifies as a post-permit change. As this board approved the original plans, only they can approve the post-permit change. So that's where we sit today. The applicants are here to discuss any questions you have. We provided you what was originally approved, and we've provided a new, rather large picture, so it helps people see. We have addressed the fire department on this, and they have no real significant concerns regarding the revised parking. So, any questions?
So you're parking, I was a little confused. Where are the lots all going to be on 14th Street?
The parking spots, sir?
Are they all going to be on 14th?
I'm going to go ahead and bring it up on the screen so everybody can see it. This is a new one, right, Ron? Yes. Okay. As you see against 14th Lane, they're going to do a paver parking with the handicap, obviously as close to the building as possible. But there are still, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see 4 other parking spots.
Where there's prepared now for...
That existing concrete on the south most likely will not support what they're going to need. They're going to have to either go over it or take it out and make a new one.
Okay.
But the top, if we look at the Public Works memorandum, where now we have more green space and the use of permeable pavers, there we go. The 10.5% ones, is that the final selection? Yeah, these are the same ones that they're using in the Ridge right now. Public Works Director is asking for a landscape buffer to be installed on the south side of that parking, on the north side of the facility. And obviously, we would ask for Florida-friendly plants, probably 5 feet in depth.
That's a different picture than we have, right?
That is the new one. Your new picture, sir?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We just thought it was prudent to give you the old ones just because it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Is the 4 parking spaces on 13th, where is the end of the lot? The dot on the diagram, the bottom?
Are you asking these 4 lots, right? Which, are you looking at this one?
Are they on the property or on the right of way?
No, they were always selected. That line would actually be the property line, which is why we have the Public Works Director involved.
So those 4 parking spots are not all on the property?
No, sir, neither are these, the existing ones.
I'm aware of that. I think I brought it up in 2017. Okay.
So that is where we sit now, which is why another reason we're back here to discuss this. During the initial design phase that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Board in 2017, I believe if you go all the way back, there's been a lot of talk about the buildings and their tightness. The buildings have been designed by Dave Mancino for extensive fire rating, which is in compliance with the Florida Building Code. But there was an issue with the northern bound staircase, and Mr. Marsh can discuss this a little bit later, where basically where the parking was, it didn't work. You just ran out of real estate. So the zoning review was approved by the board, then it was left to the building department to make the building work. Hence why we're partially here. Now, if you recall, about 1.5 years ago, this original building had a porch across the whole western side, but then it was shrunk down to this partial that you see there. So the columns come up, and then with their handicap ramp here with a minimal, and those are outswing doors, it's just for extra egress. It could be potentially dangerous for a wheelchair to transit across, up the handicap ramp from the one handicap spot that's required, and come through here. So the intent, and once again, Mr. Marsh can discuss this, is to get them outside the columns, give them the ability to navigate. They are required basically a 36-inch, you can reduce it for small portions, but not for this. The reduction's only several feet. So that is the basis of the intent of this. So it's up to the Planning and Zoning Board to discuss, ask any questions that you feel prudent.
And what would your advice be on the minimum acceptable deck distance?
I will only review it in accordance with the Florida Building Code, the Accessibility Code, as this is not a zoning review can be handled by my department, it has to be handled by this board. But I would ask for definitely 3 feet at the minimum on the outside of the column, so if there is a wheelchair transiting this way, north to south, this door doesn't swing open and potentially hit a mobility impaired individual.
Why can't they put the door to swing inside?
Traditionally, commercial doors like to swing outside because of egress. In the event of a casualty, you want to swing the doors outside.
But why is this our problem? We had proved something already that they should have already known that there was going to be a problem.
Ma'am, I can't answer that question. I'm just here to present the case. The applicants are here to answer any questions that you'd like. It's up to the board to approve or disapprove what they're asking for, or have them change it. That is definitely within the purview of this board.
Am I correct, this deck is already built?
It is, and since then I have placed a stop work order on it about a month ago. It is taped to the southern door. And at that point, the contractor was notified to cease and desist all work on the deck. The interior work can continue because they're not affecting the deck.
What about the retaining wall? Because that wasn't part of the plan either.
And that is part of this post-permit change. The application for a new retaining wall, the one that's there, as I understand it, will be removed. And a new one will be put in its place, engineered by the structural engineer of this building. I have instructed staff not to review that pending the outcome of tonight's meeting.
Is there a reason why they have to have a retaining wall in the first place? I mean, it wasn't in the plans.
I understand that, ma'am, but I would say, given the amount of soil that's on the property, a retaining wall is prudent. I think,
Had all that soil.
ma'am, once again, I was not here during the approval process of this building.
We didn't approve any of that.
That's why there's a stop work order posted, ma'am, and a post-permit change applied for.
I have a question about the Public Works Director also mentioned a loss of a buffer. Isn't there a buffer required?
There's a buffer required between a parking lot and any public way. You could assume that the street is a public way by definition. The fact is, you're just not gonna, I don't believe it was ever in there to start with. So this is an attempt to encapsulate what was the code with what was approved 3 years ago.
It didn't require variance because it's already been approved.
Yes, once you approve a mixed-use order and the plans are part of the record, that's what is approved for the zoning code.
So tonight, we're just looking at the change in the parking configuration and the change in the deck?
And the deck, yes, sir. I would say anything that you see on this plan and the next plan would be what you're to evaluate and decide on.
Right, this deck area is wood, correct?
It is a wooden deck, and it was built without a permit, a direct violation of Chapter 1 of the Florida Building Code.
They did have a handicap thing, because
Yes, ma'am, the handicap parking was on the southern side at this point, but with the deck, they have to get a ramp to get up there. Ramps do take a while, just because of the slope requirement. So they are proposing that the handicap spot here, the closest adjacent spot on the north side, up the handicap ramp, then they'll have access to either of the two businesses there on the deck. Which, once again, if you were in the southern business and you were transiting between the pole and the thing, it could become problematic, and one injury is more than I would care to deal with. So, but once again, it's up to this board to decide what they will allow and not allow. And we will implement the will of the board.
Okay, any more questions of Mr. Law?
Not at this time.
Welcome.
Okay, can we hear from the applicant, please?
Tom Marsh, 22 Soto Street, St. Augustine, Florida, 32086. Good evening to the board. What we are requesting, Mr. Law did a great job of providing a synopsis to what we're trying to accomplish, given the location of the building, given the parameters that we're trying to accommodate with what's existing, by and large, to try and provide ADA access to those two, the commercial entrances. As we've been building this building, we've found, particularly on the south side, with what was labeled as the existing handicap spaces, was quite a challenge to get to the elevation of that space in that short amount of real estate. So in consultation with Mr. Tredick from Public Works, who met us out there at the property, he provided some good ideas and consultation, by and large, is what we've sort of submitted to the board tonight, is to relocate the handicap space to the rear to allow enough horizontal distance to accommodate a ramp to be built to get to that finished floor elevation of the building. It does provide access. The original application provided means of a 5-foot wide concrete access to the commercial spaces, but by and large didn't really provide adequate detail on how to get there from what was labeled as existing handicap spaces. As we were building the building, realizing that 5-foot wide access to the columns didn't really provide a good access around the columns. So in the condition of having 5 feet allowed, we went to beyond the columns, which now exists as 8 foot as a wood deck. So if you've been to the site, that's what you'll be seeing is a 5 foot, which is outside the columns to allow ADA to pass the columns in the event that someone does come out of the building with a door open. Potentially that customer or pedestrian could get by the door and still navigate, passing someone who might need access, who might be in a wheelchair. We did go in this in conversation with Mr. Tredick again, and we had discussion with Mr. Law about it as well, as with this change, we've allowed or found actually more landscape space to be accommodated between the parking area that's on 14th Lane here and that existing duplex that's here. So we actually have quite opportunity now to provide more landscaping to that area than we previously had on the original approved plan back in 2017.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Yes. Can you tell me why the handicap parking, the proposed handicap parking, is off into the right-of-way and not totally on the property? I asked a question earlier. Can you tell me why that is?
If I can reiterate, you're asking why the handicap parking?
The proposed handicap parking.
Yes, sir.
Extends, if I was told the right information, if it extends beyond the property line.
But the old.
The old one, yes, sir, did. This new proposal here, it does not. It's actually within.
On this one here.
Okay. We're going to pull up the old plan.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, it used to be down there, which is off the property line.
Here,
14th Lane.
it's here, it's a little smaller, but what I'm pointing is the originally proposed, sorry, Mr. Law, I'm poking you with the laser there. The handicap spot was originally proposed to be here at 13th Street, part of which did go into the right-of-way, as did the existing ones at the duplex there behind.
Yeah.
We're proposing to move it to the back, behind the building, far and away from the right-of-way line that's on 14th Lane. And these would be then converted to standard spaces in this location.
That'll be 4 of them will be transferred to 14th Lane.
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't hear you.
Four of the spots will be on 14th.
Yes, sir. 4 is correct.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No, the ramp that needs to be, the transition to the ramp, basically this has all come about because the first floor level was too high to actually have the slope on the south side of the building?
The finished floor elevation of the building, the new building that's under construction, is identical to the duplex behind, and that was originally what was proposed in the first order. Once we got the structure up and so on, and we're starting to look at horizontal construction, realizing that it was kind of difficult to get handicap from that close proximity there into this building here in that short space.
It's more as the turn to the access, not quite the elevation pitch change.
Right, it's the brevity of the space, which, as Mr. Law kind of indicated, that, for ADA access, you've got to have a lot of run to get that rise out of the ramp. So we found, there's more space back here to allow us to get to that elevation, which matches the existing, the duplex behind.
So you're not using any spaces on 13th Street, nothing?
We are requesting, the original application showed a handicap spaces here. We are requesting to change those to standard spaces with the addition of 2, yes, ma'am.
You weren't supposed to use anything on 13th Street. All of your parking was supposed to be on 14th Lane.
The original am I okay to speak, or someone else want to? Is that okay? The original application showed existing handicap spaces in this location at 13th Street. And that's where we originally were going to try to get those handicap spaces to work. But given the short distance between that location and our building entrance location, to get an ADA ramp in that short distance was quite impossible without creating a lot of back and forth, okay?
Our chairman at the time said you couldn't do that, and she's not here any longer. And also that most of that wasn't the property anyway. But you ended up doing one space there. The handicap space. But most of the other spaces were supposed to be on 14th Lane. So what I'm saying now is you're not doing anything on 13th Street, right?
No, that's not correct. That's not correct. What we are doing is, there is an existing concrete pad right here, where I'm pointing at 13th Street, that was in the original, has always been there kind of a thing, and that was part of the original application and was approved to be handicap spaces. What we're requesting to do is to use those two spaces with the addition of two adjacent to that to make 4, and relocate the handicap space to the back here to allow us to get adequate horizontal length to get that ramp in, to allow the customers to access the building on that level. So there always was, on the original order, handicap spaces there, and that slab has been there since quite a long time.
I know how long this slide has been.
So there were spaces in play there, so to speak, on the original application. What we're asking to do is convert those to 2 standard plus the 2 additional, because of the fact that we don't have the other, because we're using the ramp on this north side here. So there were always 2 spaces there on the first order, or the first application that was approved. It's on the drawing, I don't know if...
Yeah, they're on this page of the drawing, it says
I
existing.
understand,
Okay.
but they were handicapped, they weren't anything other than handicapped.
That's correct. Which are actually larger, than a standard space, but that's correct, you're right. Yeah.
Any other questions of the applicant? Mr. King?
Why does the deck appear to be so much larger than what would be required for accessibility?
On the entire deck everywhere, or it's one specific location?
Well, there's quite a bit of deck out there.
What we've done,
It appears to exceed really what's required for just accessibility.
okay, good point. What we've done is, because we've got 5 feet from the face of the structure on this west side to the outside of the wood deck as built, and our application shows or is requesting that 8 feet in deck width to the west carry around the corner on both on this side, and it's actually, I think it's 11 on this north side, to allow us to get the ramp and that deck in that space.
Could you cut the corners so they could still follow the contour?
I don't see why not. In other words, you're asking if we can potentially dog-ear the deck in this location here
Yeah, it's
and potentially
excessive.
here?
I mean, when you look at it, and once you put railing on it, it's going to become quite a presence.
Understood. And I think, I'm not, one of the owners is here. It wouldn't be my call, it would.
Chair has to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is one of the owners?
Yes.
Yeah, if you'd like to come up and,
To represent.
I just wanted to clarify that came up with the meeting with Mr. Tredick.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Carr, you have to,
we need you to come up and identify yourself and your address, please.
I just thought I could help out. My name is Doug Carr. I live at 111 Marshside Drive, and I'm one of the owners of 1213th Street. What I was trying to clarify is that I met with Mr. Tredick extensively 2 times with Tom, and we looked at the different configurations. I personally came back into town after seeing that deck erected by a secondary contractor and shut it down immediately and had it shaved back. As intrusive as it is right now, it was much more intrusive prior to that. I agree concurrently, as Mr. Tredick asked, to cut the corners off to allow the access point when you get to the stop sign to be able to see the traffic coming and going. As we all know, A1A Beach is extremely busy road, and we need to, have clear vision for both pedestrians as well as bicycles and vehicles. So we discussed cutting those corners off. The only reason that the north deck is to the point where it is and Tom hasn't brought this up, and I'm not sure if it's my places, there's a 2-foot variance, not even a variance, a 2-foot, the alley is 2 feet over onto the property line. So when the town built the alley, it went onto our property 2 feet. So when we measured this out, 2 different survey companies, Brian, Mr. Law has been through this several times. When it all feathered out, we could not understand why we didn't have enough room to put the parking spots on the north side. The only reason that came clear to us was having it surveyed by 2 independent companies, and they came back and said the alley is in fact 2 feet into your property, which would prohibit 3 spaces from backing out to the north regardless of the deck or regardless of the handicap things that we're asking for. So what I'm trying to clarify is the only remedy that we came up with was from Mr. Reddick, which was, why would you not add more green space, make it more easily accessible for the handicap, use the north side, and move the parking spots to the other side, which is totally in line exactly with the property on the other side of 13th Street. If I have photos, if you'd like to see it, and it's in line with the exact property line from 13th Street, the original duplex. So basically, you'll be moving those parking spots from the north to the south, allowing extensive access for the handicap, which explains the ramp. That's why I stood up. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Any questions for him?
I'm willing to answer any questions.
Okay, so your deck that you have, you talked about it, I mean, that you shaved some off, but it's still really, yes.
I couldn't concur with you more, okay? I built this project with my partner. It's my responsibility. He's not here on a regular basis. I happen to be away during that construction of that deck for a 10-day period. I came back and immediately instructed Tom to cut it in half and stop probably right behind Brian. So anyway, that stopped immediately. We looked at the situation. The deck is the only way to make the property accessible for ADA, which both bathrooms are and all access points are, is to choose the best access point from the parking or the parking structure that exists around it. If you look to the south, we have a discrepancy. That's why it's so high. What appears to be so high to you is exactly the same height as the duplex that exists at 12 feet. And if you look at the tree, I purposely left the tag on the tree so everyone would see what I'm talking about. I see it too. It's exactly the same height. Sometimes it's hard to imagine, but it is. So the duplex has steps going up into it. The parking goes up at a hill, you step up to a deck, you step into another entrance point, then you step into the duplex. Henceforth, it's 12 feet elevation. If we were to lower that, okay, we would have all the water draining into the other building, so we put a $100,000 drainage system in to accommodate this system, so that all the water from 12 feet, including our neighbors, and any drainage that does not go through the pervious surfaces, goes into that system, which is verified in the original plans. Quite frankly, I don't know how else to accommodate this, except to move it to the south, give easy access to the handicap and ADA folks that need it and that should be there, and to accommodate the slope to the south. This will avoid any drainage problems that we have. It'll avoid any blockage of views from pulling out. If you've been down 13th or the side of the Hamden Inn lately, try to pull out on a Saturday morning. You're waiting for a while. So if we cut the corners of the decks off, which I'm more than willing to stipulate right now, if it's put in writing, I agree with that. Mr. Tredick recommended that to me. It was not in this application, but there is no other place to go with this because of the 2 feet from the alley. Even if we went back to that original plan and didn't put the handicap access there, you would still be short the 2 feet that the alley encroaches upon our property.
Okay, you have the handicap now on the north side, so, but you still
No,
have a lot
I have the handicap off of the alley in the first, it's actually 30 feet by 20 feet wide, to give this first spot, so you come in that extra wide alley now, because we're not cutting it off, right by the Hamden Inn, you pull in, and the handicap spot is right there in front of you with total access on all sides, and 30 feet, not 22 long to get, let's
Right,
let's
but
give the
it's- I
handicap
mean,
people a
it's
break
on-
here.
It's on the alley side, so instead of having the large piece of deck on the south side, do you need that much deck on the south side?
We cut the deck back, by the way. I cut it back to the, according to Mr. Tredick, we went over the deck, we looked at it, we cut it back 8 feet, and we put in exactly 20 feet, which is to the existing, parallel to the duplex. So it matches up, if I'm not correct, it matches up to the existing parking to the duplex across 13th Street. Is that correct, Tom?
So what is the footage now, then?
Am I able to interject without confusing? Okay, thank you. So to answer your question, what you don't see if you go to the site now is on that south end, there will be a set of stairs to go up to that second floor, similar to the temporary stairs that you'll see on the north side of the building. That staircase is 4 feet off the building. In that deck, coming around the south side of the building at 8 feet would allow that deck to go around that staircase and not end at the staircase, for example, so that you wouldn't have an edge at the bottom of the staircase. I'm sure that, we could look at,
So the staircase is only for the commercial property?
no ma'am, the staircase, the staircase here has not yet been built, but it's 4 feet wide. Our proposal is that the deck be 8 to allow, if someone is coming down the stairs and someone's going past the staircase, they have adequate passage.
Okay, so you're putting another staircase for the second floor, which you hadn't put in the original.
No, on the original, there's always been a upstairs residential and an upstairs residential. We only have a temporary set of construction stairs on the north side right now. There will be a permanent staircase on the north side and a permanent staircase on the south side that are both 4 feet wide. And so our proposal with our deck at 8 feet at the boulevard side is to come around using that same 8 feet and go past that staircase with 4 feet in width.
Okay, see, I don't remember that being on there. I remember there being like a little runway, like a little walkway between the two.
Maybe between the two buildings.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a long time, it's been a long time. But correct, yes.
A walkway between, and then there only being one staircase. It being on 14th
And that may very well have been a misrepresentation or something, but there's always been 2 separate residential units upstairs.
Well, I get that, but there was a walkway where both units would be able to get to, and that's what we voted on back in.
Now, you are correct in that, ma'am, in that on the front, there was a connecting deck between the whole way along the length of the building. We've cut those into 2 individual decks so as to not have, I guess really more for security. I don't know if everybody wants to share a deck with their neighbor. So that's, and perhaps that might be what you're thinking about. There was a connection on the second floor.
What, Berta, wasn't there one in the back as well that we?
There was a walkway, I think what you said, but I'm looking at the plans of 17, and there is staircase on south and north.
On both ends? See, I don't remember.
Yeah, you got it in your packet.
See, I didn't.
Ground floor, there was kind of a walkway behind the
Right,
building.
right.
That's correct, Mr. Odom.
Between the
It says a
duplex.
separate entrance.
That's correct, yes.
It was between the duplex and this.
That's correct,
this
yes.
structure.
Ground floor. Walkway though, right, between the two?
Yeah.
In the back.
Yes, yes.
I have a question. Over here.
Sorry.
With the relocation of the handicap spot, why is it necessary to have 4 additional spots added now in that south section?
In order, so our net was to not lose any spaces. We were approved at a certain number of spaces, given the use
So by moving it to the north, your net number has dropped?
No.
Not by using the south pad, they maintain the same number.
Because there was two, and so they're just adding those two.
That's correct,
Where
yes,
the
ma'am.
concrete pad
There were
is.
originally
So-
two,
Fine.
yes, I'm sorry to overspeak you,
No,
I
no.
apologize. There were two here, albeit they were handicap, one was handicap. Where our proposal is to make this 4, because we did lose on the north side, so our net spaces are identical to the original approved plan. So to get back, sir, to Mr. King was asking about the deck, about 10 minutes ago. Mr. Carr mentioned that he, in our meeting with Mr. Tredick, had talked about dog-earing those decks for, visual, triangular vision to get out onto Beach Boulevard. I'm sure that is totally agreeable. We did, the reason for the 4 or the 8-foot deck on the south side would be to get past the stairs
I
that
understand
you're
that.
not seeing now.
That part I don't have a problem with.
Okay.
It's just,
Without the stairs there, it looks like, oh gosh, why does that need to be so big? But
once you put the guardrail up and everything, it's gonna be imposing.
okay.
Mr. Law, the building department have any issues with this as it's presented?
As we're talking about dog ear in the deck, I'm gonna put a little drawing up there. You can't judge me on my quality because I used a pen with no straight edges. But this is what we would stipulate as the minimum I need for minimum handicap accessibility. And keep in mind, this would still have to go back to their designers to design it and seal and certify it. Oops, wrong way. All right, so 5 foot is a standard handicap width, and the reason why is it gives the minimum turning space for a wheelchair to spin. And keep in mind, it may not always be a wheelchair. It could be a human on crutches. That gives them the ability. So as far as the dog earring, if we look at the 5 foot, I would require at least a 5 foot clearance. And keep in mind, he is going to have that guardrail, which will take up, we'll just say 6 inches. So I would want 5 foot clear between there, 5 foot outside the posts on the columns, both sides, and then 5 foot down here. Now, one thing I haven't asked is, are we going to have a secondary set of stairs to get up to the deck area?
On the south end?
Yes.
Yes.
And do we have an idea? Is it going to be over here by the mains?
On the end.
Okay, so it shouldn't be an issue. All right. So that's what we would stipulate as a minimum needed for handicap accessibility, and keep in mind, we are doing this on the fly. So as far as the deck size, it's definitely up to the planning and zoning board to decide what's allowed. And
On the south side, it looked like he had 4 feet, and 4 feet for the stairway, and then 4 feet for the deck, and because that's not going to be a handicapped entrance, it's going to be past the entrance, that's not going to be required to be 5 feet there.
no, we still need at least 3 feet. We still have to take care of the people if they're going to enter from there. I have no objections to what they're proposing on the south side, from a building department standpoint.
The plans say 9 feet total, but you're saying 8 feet total.
Sorry, it says 9. My apologies, I was thinking it was 8.
So like I said, the building department has no opposition to the south side. Handicap accessibility is one of our biggest concerns, especially in an older town like this. But I will not budge on the 5 foot under the building code.
But aesthetically, it looked better if both sides looked the same.
Definitely. I would say make the angles the same. I would probably say it's going to be hard. I guess if you're sitting at Beachside Diner, you might, because the building is, you'd have to look at the property as a whole. But I am requesting 5 feet minimum. Like I said, I have no opposition to the north end decks moving the way they are, as they have worked extensively with the Public Works Director. So it's up to the board to decide how much deck you are willing to grant on this post-permit change. And then on top of that, regarding the retaining wall, obviously the placement will be on private property, so it won't be an issue, but the board should consider what kind of finish it wants on the outside. CMU wall?
Am I allowed to interject something?
Yes, sir, you just have to come up, just so it can be encapsulated.
I just want to add something.
All right, so if they're going to build
It's a landscape retainer block wall.
Okay, so it's a finished?
Yes.
Is it a rough blocks?
Yes.
Okay, if you look at the hotel to the north of it, it has something similar, does it not?
It's this, the proposed wall is going to be identical to the granite colored retainer block wall that's there now.
Stonegate?
So it's basically called a split face block. Yeah, it'll have a rough texture. It's an aesthetically pleasing. That's what they're going to see when they walk down the sidewalk. Then on top of that will be the guardrails to prevent falling off the deck.
And the landscaping that Mr. Tredick referenced, where would that, does that come into play tonight, or is that something to be handled on?
You can make this part of your post-permit change to install a 5-foot landscape buffer south of the north parking lot. And I would make a recommendation that you do make it a Florida-friendly plant. We can utilize the St. Johns River Water Management Florida-friendly plant book. That's pretty handy, and we can just stick with that. But you have that authority to make that a requirement of this post-permit change.
I think they need to go to the beautification board for that.
I do not agree with that statement, as they only landscape against the boulevard, not the streets going west and east.
I think it's only fair that they should.
I mean, I can only tell you what gives them the authority. They do not have the authority on side streets. However, if the board wants to make that a recommendation and the city attorney is okay with that, that's definitely within your purview.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Law or either of the applicants? Any more discussion from the board?
Can I make one statement?
You want to come back up? Yes, sir.
Yes, I would. First of all, I appreciate everyone's patience with this project. It's gone on much longer and much more of an eyesore than I've ever anticipated. I've done several of these projects throughout the country, particularly in Colorado, and they usually go much less seamless, more seamless. Tom has accommodated everything. Brian, Mr. Law has worked with us with several different architects, engineers, and whatnot to complete the project in such a manner to make it safe, accessible, and viable for the community. I think that we should take one close look at the fact that we're removing 3 parking spots from an alley that we're backing up on the very northwest side of the property. That was a extremely dangerous situation. Mr. Tredick pointed that out to me, and that's when I volunteered to cut the end of the decks off. I said, last thing I want is to be responsible for any guests or anybody having, us obstruct their views. Additionally, by allowing us to move that wall, the 14 inches, okay, which is within our purview of the application that we originally submitted, that we can be 24 inches from the sidewalk, I will make those pervious, make the deck, make the wooden deck will appear smaller because we're going to make the secondary deck pervious, so that'll be pavers. It'll drain, it'll match the stone around it, and we'll put landscaping around that. So you're going to have kind of a little bit of a layering effect. I wish the building wasn't so high, but that's what it called for, to be 12 feet equal to the other building to make the drainage system work. Believe me, I look at it all the time and I wish it was just a little bit less, but I can't change that. All I can do is work around it by putting in landscaping, willing to spend the money, the time, and the effort to make this a valuable part of the community, not an eyesore. Thank you.
Thank you. We have some public comment here. We could have Sonia Kulik.
My name is Sonia Kulik. I'm at 114 13th Street. I'm on the block more west of where this property is, and I sent, what do I have, 2 minutes or 3 minutes? Okay, so I sent you all an email with a lot of information in it, because I wasn't sure if I'd get into have time for all this tonight. So I and one of my neighbors, a couple of my neighbors, have been following this project from 2017. Basically, it just looked like way too big a building on way too small a piece of land. So I'm guessing that's probably why we're here at this point with making these concessions for parking and concessions for this little deck and that little deck. The bottom line is, it just was too big a structure for that spot of land. So I remember specifically, I went to all the meetings, and I remember specifically the issue about the parking, because it didn't seem adequate for the duplexes that were already there, plus the additional building on top and the retail at the bottom. It just didn't seem like the numbers were going to work. Specifically, I remember there was not, after a lot of wrangling, they allowed the handicap parking to be on 13th Street because they couldn't just use that whole spot because it is essentially the right-of-way. So you can't just take the right-of-way and make that your own parking spot. I specifically remember that conversation. The other thing that's come up, and again, the way that this got permitted was the 3 lots were combined, and the footprint of the existing duplex was subtracted, and that's how this all got calculated. I kind of remember hearing that these 2 properties would not be separated. And in fact, they're almost touching each other. There is 0 setback at the rear of the new multiplex. So now it turns out, and I'm not sure how this is possible, but maybe it is, that now the duplex is up for sale by itself. So considering that kind of the whole thing was calculated as 1 unit to get all the square footage to work and all the parking to work and all the setback considerations, I'm just not sure how that could happen. So I have no horse in the race. I have no stake in this. I'm not an owner. I'm just a citizen that has just been walking by this building, and first the vacant lot and then the building for the last 3 years. I've spoken a lot on this subject because I see this happening, in all honesty, all over the beach. And this is one that just caught my eye because it was like right there. So I don't know. I guess it's up to you to decide how to go forward with this, but I just wanted to come up here and state my case on that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think just to address some of your comments, we did have some discussion, Mrs. Longstreet brought up last month, we did have some discussion on the separation of the 2 lots, and that we were under the understanding that they were combined. And then we were, I think, advised at the time from the city attorney and the building official that this was outside of our purview.
I wasn't here then, but yeah, that sounds right.
Last month. Last month, when they were talking about the sale of Miss Burr, looked it up on an MLS listing. So then it was discussed. It was discussed that they may, without knowing, and the building department has no authority to intervene. There's nothing in the order saying you can't sell the property. And even if there was, I believe that could be challenged in a legal scenario. If the government,
Somebody didn't put it in.
if the government issued an order that they could not sell the property, and somebody chose to do it 10 years, I believe the government could be guilty of government taking.
Correct.
Possibly.
It'd be a taking
But
lawsuit.
the owners are here. I'm sure they're more than capable of explaining what this is, because the building department is not purview in private sales of property.
And this board
Oh, definitely no, not this board. Nobody in the government, in this government, has the authority to regulate private property sales.
Okay. So I just wanted to address that part of your comment, because I think there were a number of us that had the same opinion when we were done here. Any other questions from we have another speaker, I'm sorry. Mr. Michael Longstreet.
Michael Longstreet, 1113th Street. I'm a former board member and commissioner for St. Augustine Beach. I also have extensive experience as a land surveyor, and I'm surprised this project was ever approved in the first place to allow construction of a new structure with a roof line that overlaps a long-standing existing structure is appalling. If this was allowed because of a loophole in our building codes, that loophole really needs to be closed. The builder of this project has gotten away with a number of alterations that were not in his original plans or ever approved. He raised the finished grade, which even though they have the storm drainage on 14th Lane, it still will cause future flooding issues on 13th Street. He added the retaining wall, which has been discussed right now, along the boulevard, which hadn't had original approval. And then he started to install the deck without permit, was installing that extensive elevated deck, which is being heavily discussed now. And that was added because of handicap access needs, which should have been all in the original plans years ago when all those plans went in, so they'd know how they would have that handicapped access. His original parking plans got through with just putting the handicap on the south side of the building because those parking spaces aren't on his property. More than half of those parking spaces are on public right-of-way, which should not have ever been allowed. And the original PZB approval stated that the lots would not be allowed to be separated, and then that didn't get in the final order. I don't honestly know how the owners think they can do so anyway. When the roof lines overlap, the parking is on the duplex property, the drainage for the commercial units is on the duplex property, so I don't see how they could look at selling that part of the property separately. This is an example of a builder trying to completely run over our building department and trying to get away with it. Please take a stand for our city and do what you can do to not approve these requested changes, except as needed for handicapped access.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board?
Our attorney, may I ask the owners to clarify the question about the sale of the property?
Yeah, you definitely can.
Just so it will clear up some questions here, I think.
Thank you. We're not selling the property. The intent of selling interior space is condominiumizing a property. I'm a Realtor of 30 years, done this several times in my life. It was not the original intent. In order to meet a lot of these mandates, including a $100,000 drainage system that, will benefit not only us, but our existing neighbors, we've been put in a situation where we just simply can't carry the entire project. We have the ability, by law, to condominiumize the project, and we are 99% complete with that. You'll be getting an application through our attorney very shortly. It does not mean we are selling off the project. It means that we're going to be uniformly consistent across the property. We never encroached upon the duplex property because it is one property. It's 3.5 lots combined as one. It never was approved separately. That being said, as a Realtor and a real estate expert, I will tell you, all we're trying to do is make sure that when your neighbors walk past the street, that you see a uniform, high-quality, landscaped property that has the same paint color, the same shutters, the same thing. We've recently, if anybody here has a complaint with it, I would beg you to speak up. We recently spent an extraordinary amount of money redoing the entire outside of that 13th Street property. I've had compliments from all my neighbors when they walk by saying, "Thanks, Doug, for paying attention to the details." We did all the fences, we did all the landscaping, we did all the sprinkler systems. We're redoing the parking systems, the drainage systems. I cannot control the 2 feet that exist because of the lane being 2 feet off. And I'm not looking to blame anybody. All I'm saying is reasonable heads hopefully will prevail here and understand that there is no other place to go with this. It is not because we did not plan. Tom has done an exceptional job. It is simply the way things are laid out in an old city and an old town that's evolving. We have accommodated every possible rule and regulation that is necessary and spent excessive amount of money to meet the needs of this board, and I respectfully ask you for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr.
If I may, just in case anybody is not familiar with condominium ownership, a company can retain ownership of the condominium and sell the inside. Those people that decide to purchase the inside, essentially, as we call in our industry, they own the air inside. The structure still retains under the ownership of the parent company.
Always let this say.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for the clarification. I think that was a concern of many people in the area.
Beautiful.
No argument there. Remember, I sold that property.
I know you did. That's why I'm hoping these.
3 times I've sold that property. And you.
I've now sold it twice.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Questions from the board?
It'll be a heck of a motion.
Okay, I'm going to try my hand at the motion here. I would like to make a motion that we approve the permit modifications as submitted with the following added requirements. That the deck corners be cut off to the building department's 5-foot requirement. Yes, sir.
My name is Alan Richmond. I live at 103 13th Street. My comment would be about the parking. When I go outside on the weekends, there are no less than 9 cars on that corner. 4 of them belong to the duplex, 5 of them belong to the bed and breakfast across the street. I don't know where you're going to put 4 more cars unless they're Mini Coopers. They're just not going to fit. There are people all over the place. And then, not that I was prepared to make any suggestions, but that deck is kind of, why don't they redesign the door systems? I mean, they sell all kinds of bifold doors, sliding doors, they don't need to make the deck 8 feet wide to accommodate handicapped people. No. And I guess as long as it stays on the common ownership, you guys will be all right. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Doug wants to talk.
Huh?
Doug wants to talk.
I want to finish the motion, and then we can discuss the motion. That we, I guess, is the term dog ear the deck to the 5-foot radius from the building, to meet your minimum 5-foot radius.
But I may also recommend that you put a maximum. If we just provide 5-foot minimum, there would be no, it would become basically a
5 feet of usable space.
5 feet of usable space not to exceed 6 feet total.
Okay, and that,
I didn't understand that.
Yes, ma'am. So I need 5 feet for access, but we don't want to just say a 5 feet clear space minimum, because then what's the maximum? In the codes, there always has to be a maximum. So in this case, 5-foot minimum clear space, but then we have to allow for the guardrails to be constructed, so we limit it no more than 6 feet. That gives them a foot to build the guardrail system off it, but it doesn't allow them an open-ended rule where they can go 10 feet.
But we're asking for 5 feet of clear space.
5 foot of clear space, total deck not to exceed 6 foot.
And then I would also like to put in a requirement that they consult with the beautification board, at least for their recommendations, for the Florida-friendly plants for the buffer that's going to be required to be put in there. And how are we going to word the requirement for the buffer to?
May I?
Yeah, please.
I would recommend that you require the applicant to appear in front of the city's PAC board now for recommendations regarding the 5-foot landscape buffer.
Okay. We put that in there?
And that's also contingent if the board should be able to meet. They haven't met since March, given the state of, the state of the state right now. So we'll work on that, though. You're more than welcome to make that.
They may be able to get that information in writing from the board as well. I mean, they may not be able to meet, may not need to meet in person for that.
Yes, sir.
And if we just add in the recommendations from Mr. Tredick into the motion.
Yes, sir, and we'll also make sure that the CPAC board gets this included before their meeting date, whenever they can convene.
Okay, applicants, was that?
Wait, you haven't discussed?
No, we haven't gone anything. I just want to make sure it's clear with you guys what I put in the motion. Now, we're going to still discuss the motion. Okay. We have discussion on the motion? Oh, we have a second on the motion?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We have discussion.
Split face block in the retaining wall.
I'm sorry?
The retaining wall. You didn't mention it in the motion.
Well, it's not going to be split face.
What is it?
Stone gate.
But that's
Landscaping
what they
block.
submitted?
I have not had time to review it because it would be a waste of my resources to review a building permit when it hasn't even been allowed through zoning at this time.
Okay, so we add that in there too, Mr. King?
It has to be.
Okay. Somebody writing this down so we can,
Lacey's got us.
It's, huh? Trimaron.
Mr. Marsh, what's the exact type of block, or Mr. Card, do either one of you know that you're using?
It's the identical block that's there now. That will be taken down. That will be based on the application for the permit for the wall. We'll have a footing with reinforcement in it, filled cells. It's the same material that is there on site now, but just a little more of it to hold the soil. Yep. It is called Stone Gate is the selection. It's made by Tremron out of Jacksonville. But it's the same stuff that you see there now.
So it's glacier color?
And if I may, Chair? Mr. Marsh, are you going to, so we're going to disassemble the one so we can do the proper footers and get the proper permits for it, but we're going to reutilize the material that's there?
That's correct.
So has the board seen that? I guess the easiest way is, has everybody seen what's there?
Yes.
So could we put in the motion to use the existing materials for the retaining wall?
That's going to be for part of the retaining wall. You said you'd be adding to it, right?
Right. That's correct. As Mr. Carr mentioned, the idea with the deck and not having this, looking like this elevated, kind of situation, which you see so prominently now, is that we would be adding a couple more layers to that wall and then doing a pervious flat paver system up to the deck. So it would be more of that same material that's there in order to make that work.
Okay. So requiring to use the same material that he's using?
Yes, sir.
Consistent with.
Consistent with
Okay.
what I'm being advised.
Making that amendment to your motion.
Yes.
And I'll second that amendment.
Can you read that motion back to us?
That's not actually what she does, but I can take a stab at it if
Okay.
it suits the board. So before I start it, first is, our concern is cutting the corners of the decks back to a minimum 5 foot, not to exceed 6 foot. Second is the landscaping appear at the CPAC board at its next available meeting.
Or contact them by,
Yeah, we'll do something to get their recommendations.
contact them for their recommendations?
Yes, sir. And number 3, to use materials consistent with the existing retaining wall. Does that basically sum it up before I start?
Yes.
And adding the recommendations of the landscaping.
And add the recommendations from Mr.
And
Tredick.
Mr. Tredick's.
All right, this is going to be a good one.
And I think the way Mr. Kincaid said was for the cutbacks, was the 5 foot usable space not to exceed 6, so that we
Right.
had that.
So this is just my stab at it, is to approve the plan submitted with the exceptions of the corner of the decks are not to exceed 5 foot of to provide a minimum of 5 foot usable space, not to exceed 6 feet, that the landscaping on the north side of the property be submitted to the city CPAC board for recommendations. The materials for the proposed retaining walls be consistent with what is on site currently, and that the Public Works Director, Bill Tredick's comments be adhered to and submitted to the CPAC board.
That did it.
Okay. That was a great motion I made.
Pat yourself right here.
Any more discussion on the motion? It's been motioned and seconded.
I still have a problem with the parking. If anybody else doesn't have a problem, just like the gentleman here in the community said, 13th Street is crazy as much as 14th Lane is, that the owner was talking about. The 13th Street has children on the street that ride their bicycles up and down the street, and their little scooters up and down the street, and if you're not really careful, you don't see them. And there's the Airbnb that has 5 bedrooms, that has anywhere from 10 to 25 people on any given day, right across the street from the duplex. And the duplex is always full, which you should be very happy about. And there's always something going on. And you have beach stores. So there's people, and there's so many cars on that street parked. even though it says no parking, there are parked cars along the street all the time. And then people come and get out as well. That is so crazy. And to add more cars to it, wherever they're going to be living or enjoying whatever commercial sites that are going to be there, you're just adding more headache. And I'm not sure if that street can hold any more cars. And I don't want to see any fatality of any of those children that are on that street.
Mr. Kincaid, is there not a requirement of a number of parking spots they have to have for that? That we approved in 17?
Yes, ma'am, what you approved stays, and as I understand it, it was, and Mr. Marsh might be able to refresh my memory, but that was pretty much the minimum.
Correct.
So you would have to actually recommend and approve a reduction in parking. You do reserve that right under mixed use. I do share concerns of public safety, but parking's also a requirement. Now, just one more clarification, just to make sure everybody's on the same page here. So we've talked about dog ear in the corners of the decks for minimum 5, maximum 6. But just for the record, is the western side front deck going to be able to extend to 2 feet past, or 2 feet back from the property line?
What?
I just want it on the record, that.
Yeah, that,
So keep in mind, I just did a rough drawing showing what a dog ear would look like. But right now, the deck is 2 feet from the lot line, is essentially, that's what's allowed under the code for decks. The city reserves the right 2 feet around the lot line from hardscaping. So what we're actually proposing is we just dog ear 5 foot, not to exceed 6, so they would actually continue, and my drawing's not to scale, it would be something like that. Or it could go, it could be 5 out that way, then they could continue the deck that way. They would have to do something.
The deck right now is 8 feet off the face of the wall.
Okay, the total deck's 8 feet?
Yes.
Okay, and then here's just gonna be pavers.
Correct.
Okay?
okay.
So the deck would have to be a maximum of 8 feet from the building.
Yes, sir, and then when the plans are resubmitted, we will be looking for that and measuring it during the inspection process.
Okay, and I just want to comment on, because my understanding of the parking is we're not taking away any spaces, we're leaving the same number of spaces, we're just moving some from 14th Lane to 13th Street.
13th Street.
Yeah, and I don't know if 13th Street is less safe than 14th Lane. I don't know which is more safe. That they were saying that having those 4 spaces right there in that corner and backing out right into traffic was a problem. I don't know why it's less of a problem here.
There's more activity on 13th Street than there is on 14th Lane.
I still don't understand how the parking spot could not be on the property.
I think there's no property left.
Well, maybe, maybe not, but that's a big issue with me. I brought it up the first time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm
This
looking
is
at the
something
first approved.
Trying to fix
I
a
can't
problem
approve
that
it.
was passed.
What was
the first
approved,
time.
this was approved as the existing handicap space.
A long time ago it was on there. It's not a, to the spec, the old one wasn't to specs. It wasn't the right footage, wasn't the right size. It was just used as a handicap. Be
Well,
that
and
as it may.
all of these spaces on this side, on the south side, are larger than the property, or outside the property. I think that was
Always
discussed. I don't remember the.
Okay.
Well, it always has been with the duplex. They've always got, I mean, right or wrong, I mean, I'm not arguing that fact. It's just that they've always gone over the property line.
And the parking changes that they're making are specifically for handicapped access. That's the reason for making the request here.
I mean, I think that Ms. Longstreet makes a valid point for safety. I think that's her purpose in this, is because there is a lot of activity, and it's just, I think it's just an issue that needs to be brought up, and it will be the people parking there that's going to have to pay attention, not the owners. I mean.
Any more comment? We have a motion and a second. Any further comment? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Can we do a roll call?
Absolutely.
Mr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Ms. Odo?
Aye.
Mr. Einhauser?
Aye.
Ms. Longstreet?
No,
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Mithers?
No.
Mr. Pranis?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Keep it nice.
Watch.
Keep it nice.
Is there any old business on the board?
The next meeting
The
was
next
changed.
meeting is going to be August 25th because of the voting that's going to be
Right.
taking place in here. The next meeting of this board will be August 25th, 6 o'clock.
What do we have on the agenda?
Any other old business? Any board comment?
Yeah, just briefly, the standard lot size, and small lot size, if you're gonna add on the alleyway 7.5 feet, and it's no longer small, I don't believe, that's just my personal opinion. I don't think it's right, it's not fair. If you don't, if it's, the alley is not vacated, okay, there's an alley there, but it's not been vacated, but if it's been vacated, it should be added on. That's my opinion.
Mr. Law, just for clarification for my clarification, if an alley is vacated, they can't build into that alley. They can use it as part of their setback though, right?
Yes, sir, and keep in mind, the only thing that we would even have that would get that close to a vacated alley would be a pool or screen enclosure, and we do strictly prohibit, at least since I've been here, I don't allow anything being built in that alley. If somebody does ask, that would definitely be a public works concern, as they still retain, it depends on how the alley was vacated. Some do, the city retains the rights for access. We have turned down several masonry fences that have been proposed, because we consider a masonry fence rather permanent. Whereas a wooden fence can be removed if Public Works needs to get back in there. So, but under no circumstance do I allow permanent construction in a vacated alley.
And Mr. Mithers' comment was by adding that alleyway, the vacated alleyway, additional footage, it still qualifies under the small plotted lot.
Yes, sir, because
Small-
it's the platted lot.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
The alley vacated or not is not part of that individually platted lot.
Okay.
And this was discussed in 2018.
But they can use it as part of the setback.
Yes, sir, they can use it for setback, lot coverage, ISR, they just can't build anything in there.
Okay.
That I'm aware of. And honestly, if they get even close to it with a pool at 7.5 feet, we do have them sign a piece of paper, a statement acknowledging that even the footers can't go into that 7.5 feet.
Okay, thank you. Any other board comment?
I think the overlay district needs to be addressed with the commission, because I don't understand why we have to be here and we have all of these constituents or whatever you want to call, I mean, these are people that have valid concerns about their neighborhood, that are coming in here and asking us, you know, to not do something, and we don't have a choice, and we have to just vote things on.
It's written.
So why are we here? I mean, why are we listening to something if it's gonna be, or why, I mean, why are they coming and pouring out their hearts about something? And why are we just, I mean, why is it even on here in the first place if we just have to just rubber stamp something?
Yeah, Mr. Law made a proposal to the commission to get rid of the overlay districts. This board at the time did not support it or didn't take a position on it, and
It wasn't our board, was it? I thought it was the commission.
Yes, ma'am, we discussed this for about 40 minutes. Part of the Planning and Zoning Board wanted to keep in certain parts, such as the coastal construction control line requirements, and it was explained to the board that they cannot do that. Either the overlay goes away completely, or it must remain. And I tried everything I knew to explain to the members of the board But the CCCL requirements, it's irrelevant what your code book says. The state of Florida regulates
But
those.
all of these anyway would have been rubber stamped anyway, because they were all 50 by 93 lots.
Well, ma'am, I would agree that they are qualified for the platted lot districts, but as far as rubber stamps, I do not agree. Part of the Planning and Zoning Board's responsibility is to review the plans that are submitted and the applicants for conformance with the code. It just doesn't, the staff makes recommendations to provide technical expertise, but the 7 members of this Planning and Zoning Board are challenged with reviewing the submittal documents for conformance.
Okay,
That's why it
what
comes
I'm
to this
saying-
board.
What I'm saying is, those were 50 by 93 lots, but what you were saying before, 50 by 93 lots should get preferential treatment.
I never said that, ma'am.
No.
The code specifically addresses this scenario. It's beyond my department's ability. Now, keep in mind, if you have a 50 by 93 lot on the east side of the boulevard, you fall into the beachside medium density overlay where they do the wedding cake factor of the house. The third floors would be 70% of the total enclosed area of the first floor. But on the west side, it's not written into the code that way. So there is no preferential treatment. This is not a variance. This is just simply enforcing the code. Now, if it's the will of the Planning and Zoning Board to change the code, they normally have a representative at the commission meetings, and the commission does value what the board says as a collective. So if it's something the board wants to do, they're more than welcome to speak at the commission meeting. The commission can order the city manager to order me to change the code. Yes, sir.
If the overlay district was eliminated whenever we spoke about it in the past, these would have been variances today, correct?
No, sir, because at that time, it was a two-part approach. To remove the overlays and protect the ability for the lot owners to have 35% lot coverage in the 50 by 93 lots, it was to create a new tier in the setback schedule, which was 50 by 93 platted lots, reduce it to a 7.5 by 20. The stance of the Building and Zoning Department was to thin out what the Planning and Zoning Board sees and let the staff handle what the codes are. This would have eliminated the overlay districts, and it would be up to the Planning and Zoning Board and the Commission to decide if they wanted to continue with the beachside medium density overlay. But there's a provision in the code that came up on that section that if it complies with all other provisions of the code, the overlays are no longer required. Well, the other provisions of the code are 10-foot side setbacks, 25 front and rear. So they applied for the overlays to get a smaller setback. That's the way the code's written, and as such, my department has no ability to do anything but what the code says.
Bigger house.
Well, they're still limited 35%, whereas before, 50 by 93 lot limits you to about 28%. So Chapter 6 says no, Chapter 3 says yes. So there is a disparity in the code, which is why my staff brought it up last year, went to the commission. Without the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board, it was pulled, and that's just how it went down.
Okay. Any other board comment? Any old business? Any motion to adjourn?
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. The Island Donut Shop, do we have a,
Yes, ma'am. I'm very proud to say it passed its meter can inspection. So we are, well, not we, FPL now is in the process of energizing it under a limited power. That's to energize the air conditioning systems. The inside has had majority of the trim work done. The next phase was to energize the structure so we can balance the hood systems, get them installed. As everybody notices, the air conditioning systems are rather high off the ground. That is a federal mandate. And if you were to get in the back of the building, you would see the makeup air units the same way, 4 feet off the ground, off the natural adjacent ground.
so when are we thinking they're going to open?
I would not like to answer that question.
I want a donut.
You're ready.
As this has already been permitted for over a year probably, so I choose not to answer that one.
All right, okay. The lights are in that parking lot. This is just an FYI because of the turtles. That light, it needs, we've contacted FPL, but it needs to be deflected because you can see it for
Yes, ma'am, the street lights?
miles.
I
Well,
know
the one that FPL owns that is really on Sunset parking area.
Right, I know Bill Tredick, Public Works Director, has been in communication with FPL for changing out lights, and that was a huge concern several months ago.
Yeah.
Where it was going to take specific ones, and then does the city continue with all amber, or go that way, or spot? That is something Public Works is working with FPL on, though.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm done.
Any other comment? Any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, doesn't need a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion, meeting's
Thank
adjourned.
you.